my youngest daughter, who, I don't want to make my bed. It's going to take me for hours. But for the ADD brain, what we see is this task that, why does it matter? I'm going to get in the bed and mess it up anyway. And so for her and for me, when I don't see the importance of a task, why does it matter? What do we do about this making things harder than they have to be? Actually, hard things seem easier to a driven person. Do to me anyway. It's the simple things that make us crazy. One of the most frustrating things for me, being driven or having ADD, ADHD, it seems like I can climb mountains and do some really hard things, but the simplest things in my world drive me nuts. So what is that? Why is getting an Ironman or doing PhDs or all of these kind of mountains that seem so unbelievably difficult from the outside, and yet I've done them, and yet returning an email, it makes my head explode. But I wanted to give you a surface understanding about why, if you're sitting there and you got a list of shit in your world to do and you're not doing it, why that is so kind of it's really a defining feature of what makes us us. It wasn't until really college that I started to hear about, maybe I do have ADD, ADHD, and that was late 80s. If you're younger than I am, probably in your 20s or in 30s, you may have just been bombarded with this as a kid. And so there's a lot of shame attached to that. And, why can't you do your homework? Why aren't you doing these things? Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you doing that? And there's so much shame wrapped into just to function like everybody else. And so that why can't you be just like everyone else? And it is inside of most driven people, most ADD people, it's like, I can fit in just like everybody else. I don't want to. And that I don't want to feeling, it seems to be robbing me of something really personal to me when I am forced to comply. And I often joke that I'm unemployable. I'm not unemployable in the traditional sense. I am unemployable that I am not going to do your stupid job the way you want me to do it, because I know a better way to do it. And I can take shortcuts and get there to the same goal with about a third of the effort. But when there is this kind of base necessity of paying bills, picking up your dry cleaning, all of those little life tasks that seem to be piled up in your world, that is normal for the ADD, ADHD world. Why is it normal? And I capture this in a bunch of other videos, really kind of the foundation about really the difference between the hunter's brain, which is what we are, and the farmer's brain, which is 95% of the rest of the world. What I'm going to really dive into here is the step one, understanding, yes, that makes sense why things are so hard. And, that is obviously only part of the work. Once you understand why things are so hard, I want to really help you start to get those things done. And, the ADD, ADHD label, I am not a fan. I've said it a bunch of other times in different videos. It's not a disorder, it's a difference. Attention deficit difference, attention deficit hyperactivity difference. And so this difference is a gift, truly a gift. But I have been at times in my life so behind in schoolwork or making these videos or whatever it happens to be, that it feels like the world is just about to implode, or that impending doom feeling. And so that's the entry point. What I want to make this quick video about is that our inner world, as driven people, we are wired to feel like the earth is going to end one day, and it's going to. But most people are very satisfied with doing their mundane life tasks. And if you think about what it is to be a farmer, they're wired to literally follow a linear, rational path. They have this wonderful thing in their brain called the executive function. What the executive function is, it is a ball of activity right here in the left prefrontal that tunes information out. Doesn't tune things in. It says, ooh, not important, not important, not important, below our awareness. That's the key to understanding this and give you some compassion for some farmers. And hopefully if you have a brain that has a very strong executive function and you can stay on task for hours, maybe bring some compassion to those of us without that. And so I'm going to draw on the whiteboard here for a second, really helping you understand why it's so important. But the foundation of that, why it's so important to first understand, and then I will close this with very simple tasks about what to do about it. But why is so typical, often the case for ADD-driven people, to let things pile up? And it goes back to our underlying wiring in our reward system. So we have two variants of the dopaminergic system in the ventral tangential area of the brain that are associated with really anticipation of reward. Dopamine isn't, oh, job well done. It is actually, oh, if I do that, I'm going to feel good about it. That's what's different in us. So it's my youngest daughter who, I don't want to make my bed. It's going to take me for hours. And it is, it's literally, when she was little, it was a princess comforter and a pillow. So literally, you pull the comforter up and you go like this and you put a pillow on it and your bed's made. But for the ADD brain, what we see is this task that, why does it matter? I'm going to get in the bed and mess it up anyway. And so for her and for me, when I don't see the importance of a task, why does it matter? As I'm sitting in second grade and looking at, memorizing multiplication tables, what's the point? So driven brain, I could really tapping into kind of understanding how all these things work together. So we have occipital dominance. We use our eyeballs to go through the world. We don't use our left prefrontal. We use this thing. And hopefully everything you see is happening in the present. That as a byproduct gives us a really wonky sense of time. So when we think about a task, it doesn't, oh, that's only going to take 2 seconds of suffering. No, we see it as just suffering. We don't automatically attach time to it. So that's key in understanding number one, is that when we see things, it just feels, it doesn't feel for 2 seconds. That's what's executive. If you can imagine that, people with this executive function in the brain, oh, that's not going to be too bad because it's only going to be that. For us, it's so time is one of them. The other thing is that this occipital dominance opens up this big picture thinking, meaning that this little task needs to associate with this task and this task and this task and this task and this task. So how does it fit into the big picture? Me making my bed, how does that fit into the big picture of my life? Who cares? So that is true. But teaching her and teaching myself that making your bed or getting in the ice plunge every day does something bigger and more important. It teaches me in the big picture that I'm not going to be driven by my impulsive elephant, or I'm not going to be driven by my emotion. And so that's key understanding number two, is that when you feel this chest and you're looking at it, it is that, how long is it going to take? Kind of reality check that. Number two is really this, how does it fit in? Ice plunging, how does that make it hits my physical well-being. It changes my dopaminergic reactions for the next 3 to 6 hours. It is good for me. More importantly, it teaches me to put the observer in the driver's seat. It is this bigger picture important, so it does matter. Third thing about these tasks, we are wired for impending doom. we are wired, and Thomas Hartman, he came up with a lot of foundational theories that I jump on and obviously add a lot to, but he talked about how in all populations of different species, there's a little variant. There's a 3, 4, 5% of all bacteria, for example, or even gazelles or human beings, that are wired for a rapidly changing world. Meaning that your nice little happy bacteria swimming around in a celestial pool, what happens is all of a sudden the temperature goes up 5 degrees. 95% of the bacteria that are perfectly adapted to the current state of the environment are going to survive. But Thank goodness, there's 3, 4, 5% of those bacteria that have a little bit of variance in their brain structures and their wiring systems in their body that allow them to rapidly adapt to that change. The important part for you is that if you have this driven, we are really important in society. But more important, we have this dopamine receptor number 2 and 4 that make us feel like impending doom. It makes us feel like the other shoe's about to drop all the time. This kind of achy, weird, I didn't do my homework, I didn't even know about it feeling. But that inner world feeling that is caused by our reward systems, not by reality. I'll say that again. It's caused by our reward systems. It's a natural way our bodies process dopamine and the natural way we go through the world. But we feel as if we're not getting everything done that we need to. And so that was my doctoral dissertation about how if we're unaware of that and our inner world is this felt state of not doing enough, we create it on the outside. And I've told this videotape story, and that's one of the reasons, I use it in another context, another video. But very simply, this videotape story, the reason I'm a psychologist is, very famous psychologist, when I was 21 years old, walked into his office and he gave me homework of just find something in your world that is very simple, but you've been putting off. It's like, how many hundreds of things does that apply to? But it is find something simple and do it. But notice both the mental chatter, the monkey mind chatter about, justifying, rationalizing, or guerrillaing yourself and beating yourself up to do it. But most importantly, the resistance to doing it in the body. And that homework, I used as a reference in another video about mind, body, and soul, or monkey, elephant, observer, is putting this observer in the driver's seat. So that capacity to really understand that we are putting things off to make the elephant's reality true. I'll say that again. We're putting these things off in our world. We're leaving all these videotapes all over the place. So, you're right, elephant. I do have a lot of stuff I don't do. The other part of that is that we often identify and make an identity out of that feeling of not enough. And so it's validation for my shame. I'll say that again. We don't do these things so it validates this felt sense of what I am. I'm broken. I'm not enough. How do I know? Because I didn't need to do that, and I did do that. And so that understanding is the path to freedom, that you're not a list of everything you've accomplished. You're a monkey. You're a Homo sapien. That's what you are. And so the identity videos that I make is tying into this. The last thing I'll really point out is really this understanding how all of these kind of topics that I've touched on and all these different videos that I've touched on kind of coming together to give you an understanding of why you do it, how it validates your sense of shame, how it fits our brain issue and our felt sense of, kind of reality. And the last part is how meditation is the core to actually undoing all of this, making the mundane tasks, actually turning them into meditation. Let's jump into the solution. What do we do about this making things harder than they have to be? Actually, hard things seem easier to a driven person, due to me anyway. It's the simple things that make us crazy. So, got a video coming up, a big video coming up called The Brain Dump, which dives really deep into actually how to create the executive function outside of our body. And that's what we got to do. That's the big picture solution. But this bridge video, this video of really helping you understand that you're not broken, that it makes sense why returning videotapes feeds a lot of what makes up the driven person. It feeds our shame. It feeds our sense of impending doom. It feeds this big picture. I don't give a shit about that. That's not important to me. How does it fit? all of those things, which I talked about earlier in this, fit into this solution. So what causes or what creates all human behavior? Very simple. We'll call this performance behavior. Anytime this is BX, anytime that's behavior in psycho terms. This, AX, is anxiety. That's why I dope X. 0, 0, 10, 10. And so going back to why we put off things here, very simply, 0 anxiety, 0 behavior. But this nice curve, and I've drawn this in other videos before, it's really about optimal performance in that video. What this is about is really how, in that video, it talks about how we're not in reality. It's in the meditation context more. But this video is really about how we put things off. Let me give you a framework for this again, if this is the first time you've seen this. Maybe 0 anxiety, 0 performance. But as our anxiety goes up, we hit this place called flow, where there's optimal arousal for optimal performance. Typically, this is called excitement. This is fear. And so the body doesn't know the difference between a roller coaster and a cliff. Really, it is exactly the same neurohormones and neuropeptides and physiological reaction. And, oh, this is going to be... What's different is our mental interpretation of that. So this is really an interaction between monkeys and elephant. And in that other video about flow, another video about optimal performance, I talk about how this is the most important part of this entire chart. Understanding that the monkey-elephant interpretation of reality, how anxious should I be about whatever I'm doing? And therefore, no one is actually on this in reality. So we have an interpretation here, and we have an interpretation here. So they're both subjective. There's no really objective reality on here. And that was Csikszentmihalyi who came up with this flowchart of really understanding that there is this optimal performance. But for this context, in this video, these things that we put off. So here's our 0 compared to the world's, and here's our 10. And so in reality, we should be actually feeling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We should be feeling somewhat anxious about not getting my dry cleaning. A little bit even. Where in the ADD, ADH brain, it really truly doesn't exist. It's like, whatever. Yeah, whatever. And we do these things until we build up this central nervous system excitement to where it does finally trigger this biological response. And I call this the moment. Moment. I didn't do my taxes, or I don't have any clean clothes to go out tonight because I didn't get my dry cleaning. Blah. And so that critical moment is what we have to be able to. And this is really a pitch out for my next video about the brain dump. But it is that ability to actually look at all of the videotapes in our life, look at these things that we've been putting off, and how anxious should I be about them? Using our big picture thinking, again, whether it's building this practice of actually putting the soul in the driver's seat, or this practice of actually seeing how I will be very anxious about not having clean shirts on Friday night, or God forbid a job, another video I got to make and I have nothing to wear. And so that brain kind of morphing of our big picture, taking the breath, coming back to here and really looking at our reality. understanding that first and foremost, you're not your feelings. You're not your list of all of these things you haven't done. What are you? You're a biological animal. We have to do these things. And how much anxiety is it going to take me to actually get me to wake up to this and go and do? It's surprisingly little. Here's the last component of this model that I'm really pushing on the world, particularly the ADD, ADHD people, is that we have to think about how it's going to feel when it's done. Just going back to the basics of our brain, we don't assess time for, and so everything feels bigger than it's going to take longer or whatever, or the opposite. Oh, I can do my taxes in 10 minutes. I can do all of biology. I can write a term paper in 2 days. So taking it out of that, but most importantly, how is it going to be when I complete it? It will feel relieving. So rather than reward driving the driven person, oftentimes what I find is that sense of freedom is the most rewarding thing for the ADD and the ADHD brain, that I'm free from all of these things that I've been putting off and putting off and putting off and putting off and putting off. And the brain dump video, jump on that right after this, because it goes into really how to create this external executive function so we can step back out of our life using the big picture thinking, look at our whole life perspective, and then rank order based on this. How long is it going to take me and how important is it? Is it urgent and important? And so that component of it